Yeah, I know. This keeps happening, alright? But I think I can get back into the groove. So, let's meet the master. Hello, my name's Chris What's Yours and welcome back to Marathon Man, where I'm going through Doctor Who from the very beginning. And it's an odd one, this one. Terror of the Autons sort of has always felt like it happens without me. It's there, I'm watching it, I'm even reacting to it as it happens, but when it's over, it sort of feels like it never actually needed me there. It's a little bit like I've walked in on Doctor Who playing with itself. Now, it has the same sort of streamlined length as its sister Spearhead from Space. It's got the same monsters as that previous story, but it introduces not just one, not just two, but three new regular characters. And with all of that going on, it really does have quite a lot of things going for it. A short amount of episodes, but a lot crammed in. So it really, Terror of the Autons should not pull its punches, should not drag, should not feel like a chore. Streamlined running time, Autons and new characters to set up. And while I guess it is asking a little bit too much for lightning to strike twice, the end result of this one shouldn't really happen. Because even though what we do end up with does have its moments, it just ends up feeling like an inferior companion piece. I think there are probably several reasons for this, but I think the main one, which I can pinpoint in the kind of fug of discombobulation that this story brings out in me, is that aesthetically, this story is really ugly to look at. I know Spearhead from Space was shot on film and ended up looking lovely as a result, but Terror of the Autons doesn't just look inferior compared with its predecessor, I think it looks inferior compared with a lot of Doctor Who that came before it. The cosmetic changes from Season 7 feel for the worse on the whole, and the CSO that Barry Letts became very fond of just feels entirely at points unnecessary. Okay, for a start it hasn't aged particularly well, and in its infancy it may have looked fresh and exciting and new. It's just that it feels entirely mismatched with actual exteriors, and it's this, more than anything else I think, that result in this story being a little bit tough to sit through at times. Yes, the technique makes perfect sense if you have to impose a moving troll doll into a scene, and it makes a pretty decent fist at it. But Mrs. Farrell in her kitchen? It's prominent throughout, and it takes me further out of the story than an Optera ever managed. It's such a shame when there hasn't been a story of the Third Doctor that I've disliked yet. Bold words, Chris. Not that I out and out dislike Terror of the Autons. Let me talk through my thoughts on this. Because, truth be told, I don't dislike this one either. Not completely. Before this one, I know there have only been 4 Third Doctor stories, but I've been having such an unexpectedly nice time at the Pertwee party that Terror of the Autons sort of like shows up like a pissed up uncle who's forgotten how old you are and just keeps going, look at me, look at what I can do, and then makes it look like the top of his finger can slide off. So, first dud of the Pertwee era? I'm tempted to say yes. However, it's got enough redeeming qualities, enough to make me like this more than the last time that I watched it. And if I am tempted to say it's the first dud of the Third Doctor era, maybe I don't feel like I actually can. But I have no qualms in saying that it is a very difficult story for me to fully connect with. Beyond the look of the whole thing, it has sort of fairly limp cliffhangers as well. Now, it's only 4 episodes, that means it's only got 3 of them. So you know I'm not talking about the policeman having his face peeled off, because that one is great. It may have been deemed to have gone slightly too far for children's television, but there's no doubt it's a powerful moment. No, it's the other 2 that I've sort of got problems with. And one of them is fine in theory, it just, I feel like it gets bundled in the execution. In the build-up to it and in the staging of it, Jo's physical attacks feel just wrong. And the third, where the Doctor is menaced by a telephone flex, is worse than Pertwee being attacked by the Nestine at the end of Spearhead from Space. As a cliffhanger, it just doesn't work for me. Bereft of tension, it rests in peace. Which brings me onto another issue that I've got. This story introduces us to the Master. Now, that's not an issue in and of itself before you all start wondering what's Chris got against Roger Delgado as the Master. No, he's brilliant and he goes on to be even better. It's just that I can't get my head around why the show introduces him in the way that it does. He's a rogue Time Lord who must have come by this name somehow, so how formidable must he be? Well, he can hypnotise people and brings about an alien invasion, so it isn't all just hot air. However, at one point, he kills a man by making him sit down. And he has to try really hard to make that man sit down so that the inflatable chair can envelop him and take his life. It is f***ing ludicrous. Don't get me wrong, I know that a big part of the Master's deal is this kind of performative camp. But here he's being introduced as the Doctor's Moriarty, a heck of a villain. And we've already seen that the Master can shrink people down with his tissue compression eliminator. Do that. Or, if you have to have him be suffocated to death by the chair, hypnotise him into sitting down. We've seen him do that too. And a bit later, for the plan to work and to dispatch Farrell Sr. to stop him from interfering, the Master has to ensure that the troll doll goes with him. None of this conspires to suggest a well thought out or robust plan, and indeed when the Master only realises his whopping oversight and fatal flaw at the very end, it just undermines him as a villain. Where the CSO, or rather overuse of it, is what I think makes this story such a slog, it's this treatment of the Master that actually infuriates me the most. Judged by performance alone, which is great, he is a force to be reckoned with. And one of the most fun and intriguing characters we have ever had on the show. And it's to Roger Delgado's credit that that's the sort of thing we end up focusing on, because judged by his actions alone here, he is a prize moron and one of the most ineffective villains we've ever had on the whole show. That this story ends up undermining him as much as this is its biggest crime, because of the 3 new regular characters we have introduced here, he is by far the best one. He's the most interesting character we've had since the Warlord, and Delgado is fantastic from the start. And like I say, it really is a testament to his performance that we don't remember him for being this sort of bumbling buffoon of a villain, and we remember him as this totemic adversary. We don't remember him as an incompetent nincompoop. We do remember Delgado's Master as the anti-Doctor, which is exactly how he was conceived. He has the same debonair aura about him, and his choice of clothing sort of implies he has a better idea than the Doctor of how to fit in with his surroundings. Although the Doctor's garb is a marked improvement in that area on the last season without being a total departure. And this detail sort of goes hand in hand with another lovely little one which is introduced at the start of the episode, because the floating Time Lord banker at the beginning does point out that the Master was more gifted academically than the Doctor. And that, not only is it a very nice touch, it is also played brilliantly by Pertwee. It's a very good way of setting the Master up, even if the story then destroys that good work later. The Master introduces himself as the Master and then gets on with his rubbish plan, and we learn everything else about him by others talking about his reputation. He never says as much, but we know he's a Time Lord, he arrived in a TARDIS, and we know he and the Doctor know each other, because a shared history is hinted at. And when the two finally come face to face, it is, I'm going to stop short of saying electrifying, but it is very, very good. And that is down to both performers bringing their A games. Through their very well judged performances, the Doctor and the Master really do feel like old acquaintances. And it will go on to become one of the most interesting and fruitful relationships in all of Doctor Who. And the genius of it here is that it isn't even really set up. Those in charge may have got a lot wrong with this story, but this is one of those things that they got very, very right. Not having this be the Doctor and the Master's first encounter. Making this a continuation of something we haven't thus far been privy to is a smart move, and it really gives this story some brownie points at a point where it felt like I was losing considerable interest. The Doctor's wry smile when the Master escapes and his confession that he's rather looking forward to seeing him again suggests a far more complex relationship than a simple hero-villain one. Terror of the Autons will never be, and isn't, remembered for being a great Auton story. It will be, and is remembered for the introduction of the new regulars. Obviously, my own personal favourite of those is the Master. Above and beyond all of the obvious possibilities, opportunities and potential that his mere presence throws up, the Master is just a heck of a lot of fun to watch. When he casually says,
"One which I shall exploit to assist in the destruction of humanity,"
in much the same way that somebody might say, which I will use to pop up an extra bookshelf over there, it is brilliant. And sort of like confirms those feelings that Delgado really does match Pertwee in the stakes of charm and charisma. The Master is a very welcome addition. And then we have Jo. Lovely Jo. And here we have something which has been rather rife in Doctor Who. Katie Manning is excellent from the off. The character that she's playing, not as much. Yet. The chemistry is not in question. She bounces off Pertwee really well from the get-go. She's a different direction from where they were going with Liz, but arguably an equally valid one. They might not get her right straight away, and in fact, actually, I think this story might be improved by if Liz was still around. There is a very, very lovely moment concerning Jo early doors when the Brig knows that the Doctor won't be able to sack her. And so he tells the Doctor that he has to dismiss her himself. It's a lovely bit of character work on the part of all three, and it develops each of their relationships with the other. Because the Brig's right, of course, and it obviously results in her sticking around.
"What the blazes are you doing here? I told you to stay at headquarters."
Just as well for you I didn't, isn't it?
Despite her not being the best that she can be quite yet, I do really like Jo here. There is definite potential there. When fulfilled, after Zoe and Liz, will make it 3 for 3 on companions. And the third new regular is Yates. And to be honest with you, I don't really want to dwell on it. We comparatively recently lost Richard Franklin, and I understand that when we lose a member of the Doctor Who family, it does hit hard. However, sometimes it can colour criticism of the show. I'm trying to say this very carefully, but Yates is weird. The lines he gets and the way he's played almost sometimes suggest that he's meant to be. But even if that's the case, then that's an odd decision. That's the wrong decision. No. And no disrespect to Richard Franklin, I don't like Yates. Good thing Pertwee is still the man. His era may have coalesced around him, and if this story is anything to go by, maybe made everything a bit too safe and a bit too comfortable, but he's still a great Doctor to watch. He still offers some of that childish energy that both Hartnell and Troughton had. When he immaturely spits out,
"What's wrong with being childish? I like being childish."
it shows us that he's the same man. And his impetuous cheek during the Briggs debrief is absolutely delightful. So despite some promise and some hidden pearls, I can't say that this story comes off all that well. It's not a total disaster, of course it's not. Not when you've got Pertwee, Delgado, Manning all being this excellent, plus a really fun turn from Michael Wisher thrown in there as well, then this story definitely has some brownie points. Where I feel ever so slightly disappointed is that after season 7 it did feel like I was on a Doctor Who roll. And this brings a little bit of turbulence. No real matter though, because the Master and Jo are both here to stay now, and even though in this story they don't have the most auspicious of beginnings, they do have some really excellent stuff coming up. So I might be a little bit deflated but not deterred, that's probably the best way to put it, and with some lovely stuff still to come in season 8, even after 282 episodes, I am still raring to go.
I thought you took an A-level in science.
I didn't say I passed.
There really are some great lines in here, which through maybe some muddled plotting still show that Robert Holmes is probably the best writer the show has had up until this point. Honourable mention also to...
All right, Tony, he's no elephant.
Please sit in my chair, Mr. McDermott, otherwise my plan won't work. As ever, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this battle of wits with the Doctor's old school friend, then you know how YouTube works. Please do hit the like thumb and share it like mad. And what do you think of this story? Does it get season 8 off to a flying start, or does it have you screaming CSO for God's sake? Is the Master a really fun, invigorating presence? And is Jo a suitable replacement for Liz? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you back here soon for some mind games. So, if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, and I'll see you in prison.